For all its technological achievements, modern Western society has no real understanding of death, or what happens in death, or after death. People today are taught to deny death, and taught that it means nothing but annihilation and loss. That means that most of the world lives either in denial of death, or in terror of it. Even talking about death is considered morbid. Many people believe that simply mentioning death is to risk wishing it upon ourselves. Others look on death with a naive, thoughtless cheerfulness, thinking that for some unknown reason, death will work out all right for them, and that it is nothing to worry about. One Tibetan master says, people often make the mistake of being frivolous about death and think, oh, well, death happens to everybody, it's no big deal, it's natural, I'll be fine. That's a nice theory, until one is dying. The disastrous effects of the denial of death go far beyond the individual. They affect the whole planet. Fear of death and ignorance of the afterlife are fueling that destruction of our environment that is threatening all of our lives. So isn't it all the more disturbing that people are not taught what death is, or how to die, or given any hope in what lies after death, and so what really lies behind life? According to the wisdom of Buddha, we can actually use our lives to prepare for death. In the Buddhist approach, life and death are seen as one whole, where death is the beginning of another chapter of life. Death is a mirror in which the entire meaning of life is reflected. This view is central to the teachings of the most ancient school of Tibetan Buddhism. In these teachings, we find the whole of life and death presented together as a series of constantly changing transitional realities known as bardos. The word bardo is commonly used to denote the intermediate state between death and rebirth, but in reality, bardos are occurring continuously throughout both life and death, and they are junctures when the possibility of liberation or enlightenment is heightened. Because of the vastness and all-comprehensiveness of the Bardo teachings, you will be guided stage by stage through the unfolding vision of the journey through life and death. Our exploration necessarily begins with a direct reflection on what death means and the many facets of the truth of impermanence. The kind of reflection that can enable us to make rich use of this life while we still have time, and ensure that when we die, it will be without remorse or self-recrimination at having wasted our lives. As Tibet's famous poet-saint Milarepa said, "My religion is to live and die without regret." Contemplating deeply on the secret message of impermanence, what lies in fact beyond impermanence and death, leads directly to the heart of the ancient and powerful Tibetan teachings, the introduction to the essential nature of mind. Realization of the nature of mind, which you could call our innermost essence, the truth which we all search for, is the key to understanding life and death. For what happens at the moment of death is that the ordinary mind and its delusions die, and in that gap, the boundless skylight nature of our mind is uncovered. This essential nature of mind is the background to the whole of life and death, like the sky which holds the whole universe in its embrace. The teachings make it clear that if all we know of mind is the aspect of mind that dissolves when we die, we will be left with no idea of what continues, no knowledge of the new dimension of the deeper reality of the nature of mind. So it is vital for us all to familiarize ourselves with the nature of mind while we are still alive. Only then will we be prepared when it reveals itself spontaneously and powerfully at the moment of death. The Bardo teachings show us precisely what will happen if we prepare for death and what will happen if we do not. The choice could not be clearer. If we refuse to accept death now, while we are still alive, we will pay dearly throughout our lives at the moment of death and thereafter. The effects of this refusal will ravage this life and all the lives to come. We will not be able to live our lives fully. We will remain imprisoned in the very aspect of ourselves that has to die. This ignorance will rob us of the basis of the journey to enlightenment and trap us endlessly in the realm of illusion, the uncontrolled cycle of birth and death, the ocean of suffering that we Buddhists call samsara. Yet the fundamental message of the Buddhist teachings is that if we are prepared, there is tremendous hope, both in life and in death. The teachings reveal to us the possibility of an astounding and finally boundless freedom, which is ours to work for now in life. The freedom that will also enable us to choose our death, and so to choose our birth. For someone who has prepared and practiced, death comes not as a defeat, but as a triumph, the crowning and most glorious moment of life. Death is a vast mystery, but there are two things we can say about it. It is absolutely certain that we will die, and it is uncertain when or how we will die. The only surety we have then is this uncertainty about the hour of our death, which we seize on as the excuse to postpone facing death directly. Perhaps the deepest reason why we are afraid of death is because we do not know who we are. We believe in a personal, unique and separate identity, but if we dare to examine it, we find that this identity depends entirely on an endless collection of things to prop it up: our name, our biography, our partners, family, home, job, friends, credit cards. It is on their fragile and transient support that we rely for our security. So when they're all taken away, will we have any idea of who we really are? When we die, we leave everything behind, especially this body we have cherished so much and relied upon so blindly and tried so hard to keep alive. But our minds are no more dependable than our bodies. Just look at your mind for a few minutes. You will see that it's like a flea, constantly hopping to and fro. You will see that thoughts arise without any reason, without any connection. Swept along by the chaos of every moment, we are the victims of the fickleness of our mind. If this is the only state of consciousness we are familiar with, then to rely on our minds at the moment of death is an absurd gamble. Our myopic focus on this life, and this life only, is the great deception, the source of the modern world's bleak and destructive materialism. No one talks about death, no one talks about the afterlife, because people are made to believe that such talk will only thwart our so-called progress in the world. Our lives seem to live us, to possess their own bizarre momentum, to carry us away. In the end, we feel we have no choice or control over them. As the 18th century Tibetan master Jigpe Lingpa said, mesmerized by the sheer variety of perceptions, beings wander endlessly astray in samsara's vicious circle. It is important to reflect calmly, again and again, that death is real and comes without warning. Don't be like the pigeon in the Tibetan proverb. He spends all night fussing about, making his bed, and dawn comes up before he has even had time to go to sleep. One of the chief reasons we have so much anguish and difficulty facing death is that we ignore the truth of impermanence. We so desperately want everything to continue as it is that we have to believe that things will always stay the same. But this is only make-believe, and as we so often discover, belief has little or nothing to do with reality. Reflect on this. The realization of impermanence is paradoxically the only thing we can hold on to, perhaps our only lasting possession. It's like the sky or the earth. No matter how much everything around us may change or collapse, they endure. Whenever we lose our perspective or fall prey to laziness, reflecting on death and impermanence shakes us back into the truth. What is born will die. What has been gathered will be dispersed. What has been accumulated will be exhausted. What has been built up will collapse. And what has been high will be brought low. Isn't everything always changing? The leaves on the trees in the park, the light in your room as you listen to this, the seasons, the weather, the time of day, people passing on the street. And what about us? The cells of our body are dying, the neurons in our brain are decaying, even the expression on our face is always changing depending on our mood. What we call our basic character is only a mind stream, nothing more. Today we feel good because things are going well. Tomorrow we feel the opposite. Where did that good feeling go? New influences took us over as circumstances changed. We are impermanent, the influences are impermanent, and there is nothing solid or lasting anywhere that we can point to. What could be more unpredictable than our thoughts and emotions? Do you have any idea what you're going to think or feel next? Our mind, in fact, is as empty, as impermanent, and as transient as a dream. Look at a thought. It comes, stays, and it goes. The past is past, the future not yet risen, and even the present thought, as we experience it, becomes the past. The only thing we really have is nowness, is now. In Tibet, there is the story of Krisha Gautami, a young woman who had the good fortune to live at the time of the Buddha. When her firstborn child was about a year old, it fell ill and died. Grief-stricken and clutching its little body, Krisha Gautami roamed the streets, begging anyone she met for a medicine that could restore her child to life. Some ignored her, some laughed at her, some thought she was mad. And finally, she met a wise man who told her that the only person in the world who could perform the miracle she was looking for was the Buddha. So she went to the Buddha, laid the body of her child at his feet, and told him her story. The Buddha listened with infinite compassion, and then he said gently, "There is only one way to heal your affliction. Go down to the city and bring me back a mustard seed from any house in which there has never been a death." Krisha Gautami felt elated, and she set off at once for the city, and she stopped at the first house she saw, and she said, "I've been told by the Buddha to fetch a mustard seed from a house that has never known death." "Many people have died in this house," she was told. So she went on to the next house. "Oh, there have been countless deaths in our family," they said, and so on to a third and a fourth house, until she had been all round the city and realized the Buddha's condition could not be fulfilled. She took the body of her child to the charnel ground and said goodbye to him for the last time, and then returned to the Buddha. "Did you bring the mustard seed?" he asked. "No," she said. "I am beginning to understand the lesson you're trying to teach me. The grief made me blind, and I thought that only I had suffered at the hands of death." "Why have you come back?" asked the Buddha. "To ask you to teach me the truth," she replied, "of what death is, what might lie behind and beyond death, and what in me, if anything, will not die." The Buddha began to teach her, "If you want to know the truth of life and death, you must reflect continually on this. There is only one law in the universe that never changes, that all things change, and that all things are impermanent. The death of your child has helped you to see now that the realm that we are in, samsara, is an ocean of unbearable suffering. There is one way, and only one way, out of samsara's ceaseless round of birth and death, which is the path to liberation. Because pain has now made you ready to learn, and your heart is opening to the truth, I will show it to you." Krisha Gautami knelt at his feet and followed the Buddha for the rest of her life. Near the end of it, it is said, she attained enlightenment. Krisha Gautami's story shows us something we can observe again and again. A close encounter with death can bring a real awakening, a transformation in our whole approach to life. Frida Naylor, a doctor who courageously kept a diary as she died of cancer, wrote, "I have had experiences which I never would have had, for which I have to thank the cancer. Humility, coming to terms with my own mortality, knowledge of my inner strength, which continually surprises me, and more things about myself which I have discovered because I've had to stop in my tracks, reassess, and proceed." If we can indeed reassess and proceed with this newfound humility and openness, and a real acceptance of our death, we will find ourselves much more receptive to spiritual instructions and spiritual practice. This receptivity could well open to us yet another marvelous possibility, that of true healing. Tibetan Buddhists believe that illnesses like cancer can be a warning, to remind us that we have been neglecting deep aspects of our being, such as our spiritual needs. If we take this warning seriously and change fundamentally the direction of our lives, there is a very real hope for healing not only our bodies, but our whole being. The purpose of reflecting on death is to make a real change in the depth of your heart. Looking into death needn't be frightening or morbid. Why not reflect on death when you are really inspired, relaxed and comfortable, lying in bed or on holiday or listening to music that particularly delights you? Why not reflect on it when you're happy, in good health, confident, full of well-being? Don't you notice that there are particular moments when you are naturally moved to introspection? Work with them gently, for these are the moments when you can go through a powerful experience and your whole world view can change quickly. Contemplation on death will bring you a deepening sense of what we call renunciation, in Tibetan, Nejung. Ne means actually or definitely, and Jung means to come out, emerge, or be born. The fruit of frequent and deep reflection on death will be that you will find yourself emerging, often with a sense of disgust from your habitual patterns. You will find yourself increasingly ready to let go of them, and in the end you will be able to free yourself from them as smoothly, the masters say, as drawing a hair from a slab of butter. This renunciation that you will come to has both sadness and joy in it. Sadness because you realize the futility of your old ways, and joy because of the greater vision that begins to unfold when you're able to let go of them. This is no ordinary joy. It's a joy that gives birth to a new and profound strength, a confidence, an abiding inspiration that comes from the realization that you are not condemned to your habits and that you can indeed emerge from them, that you can change and grow more and more free. There would be no chance at all of getting to know death if it happened only once. But fortunately, life is nothing but a continuing dance of birth and death, a dance of change. So let us then work with these changes now in life. That is the real way to prepare for death. Life may be full of pain, suffering, and difficulty, but all of these are opportunities handed to us to help us move towards an emotional acceptance of death. It is only when we believe things to be permanent that we shut off the possibility of learning from change. If we shut off this possibility, we become closed and we become grasping. Grasping is the source of all our problems. Since impermanence to us spells anguish, we grasp onto things desperately, even though all things change. We are terrified of letting go, terrified, in fact, of living at all, since learning to live is learning to let go. And this is the tragedy and irony of our struggle to hold on. Not only is it impossible, but it brings us the very pain that we are seeking to avoid.
Look still deeper into impermanence, and you will find that it has another message, another face, one of great hope, one that opens your eyes to the fundamental nature of the universe and our extraordinary relationship to it. If everything is impermanent, then everything is what we call empty, which means lacking in any lasting, stable and inherent existence, and all things, when seen and understood in their true relation, are not independent but interdependent with all other things. The Buddha compared the universe to a vast net woven of countless variety of brilliant jewels, each with a countless number of facets. Each jewel reflects in itself every other jewel in the net and is in fact one with every other jewel. Think of a wave in the sea. Seen in one way, it seemed to have a distinct identity, an end and a beginning, a birth and a death. But seen in another way, the wave itself doesn't really exist, but is just the behavior of the water, empty of any separate identity, but full of water. So when you really think about the wave, you come to realize that it is something made temporarily possible by wind and water and is dependent on a set of constantly changing circumstances. You also realize that every wave is related to every other wave. Nothing has any inherent existence of its own. When you really look at it, and this absence of independent existence is what we call emptiness. Think of a tree. When you think of a tree, you tend to think of a distinctly defined object, and on a certain level, like the wave, it is. But when you look more closely at the tree, you will see that ultimately it has no independent existence. When you contemplate it, you will find that it dissolves into an extremely subtle net of relationships that stretches across the universe. The rain that falls on its leaves, the wind that sways it, the soil that nourishes and sustains it, and all the seasons and the weather, the moonlight and the starlight and sunlight, all form part of this tree. As you begin to think about the tree more and more, you will discover that everything in the universe helps to make the tree what it is, and that it cannot in any moment be isolated from anything else, and that at every moment its nature is subtly changing. And this is what we mean when we say things are empty and they have no independent existence. Modern science speaks to us of an extraordinary range of interrelations. Ecologists know that a tree burning in the Amazon rainforest alters in some way the air breathed by the citizens of Paris, and that the trembling of the butterfly's wing in Yucatan affects the life of a fern in Hebrides. Biologists are beginning to uncover the fantastic and complex dance of genes that creates personality and identity, a dance that stretches far into the past and shows that each so-called identity is composed of a swirl of different influences. Physicists have introduced us to the world of quantum particles, a world astonishing-like described by the Buddha in his image of the glittering net that unfolds across the universe. Just like the jewels in the net, all particles exist potentially as different combinations of other particles. So when we really look at ourselves then and the things around us we took to be so solid, so stable and so lasting, we find that they have no more reality than a dream. Buddha said, "Know all things to be like this, a mirage, a cloud castle, a dream, an apparition, without essence, but with the qualities that can be seen. Know all things to be like this, as the moon in a bright sky, in some clear lake reflected, though to that lake the moon has never moved. Know all things to be like this, as an echo that derives from music, sound and weeping, yet in that echo is no melody. Know all things to be like this, as a magician makes illusions of horses, oxen, carts, and other things. Nothing is as it appears. Contemplation of this dreamlike quality of reality need not in any way make us cold, hopeless, or embittered. On the contrary, it can open up in us a warm humor, a soft and strong compassion we hardly knew we possessed, and so more and more generosity toward all things and beings. The great Tibetan saint Milarepa said, "Seeing emptiness, have compassion." When through contemplation we really have seen the emptiness and interdependence of all things in ourselves, the world is revealed in a brighter, fresher and more sparkling light as the infinitely reflecting net of jewels that Buddha spoke of. We no longer have to protect ourselves or pretend, and it becomes increasingly easy to do what one Tibetan master has advised. Always recognize the dreamlike quality of life and reduce attachment and aversion. Practice good-heartedness toward all beings. Be loving and compassionate no matter what others do to you. What they will do will not matter so much when you see it as a dream. The trick is to have the positive intention during the dream. This is the essential point. This is true spirituality. True spirituality also is to be aware that if we are interdependent with everything and everyone else, even our smallest, least significant thought, word and action have real consequences throughout the universe. Throw a pebble into a pond, it sends a shiver across the surface of the water. Ripples merge into one another and create new ones. Everything is inextricably interrelated. We come to realize that we are responsible for everything we do, say or think, responsible in fact for ourselves, everyone and everything else, and the entire universe. The Dalai Lama has said, in today's highly interdependent world, individuals and nations can no longer resolve many of their problems by themselves. We need one another. We must therefore develop a sense of universal responsibility. It is a collective and individual responsibility to protect and nurture the global family, to support its weaker members, and to preserve and tend to the environment in which we all live. Impermanence has already revealed to us many truths, but it has a final treasure still in its keeping, one that lies largely hidden from us, unsuspected and unrecognized, yet most intimately our own. The Western poet Rainer Maria Rilke has said that our deepest fears are like the dragons guarding our deepest treasure. The fear that impermanence awakens in us, that nothing is real, that nothing lasts, is, we come to discover, our greatest friend, because it drives us to ask, if everything dies and changes, then what is really true? Is there something behind the appearances, something boundless and infinitely spacious, something in which the dance of change and impermanence takes place? Is there something, in fact, we can depend on that does survive what we call death? Allowing these questions to occupy us urgently and reflecting on them, we slowly find ourselves making a profound shift in the way we view everything. With continued contemplation and practice in letting go, we come to uncover in ourselves something we cannot name or describe or conceptualize, something we begin to realize lies behind all the changes and the deaths of the world. The narrow desires and the distractions to which our obsessive grasping onto permanence has condemned us begin to dissolve and fall away. As this happens, we catch repeated and glowing glimpses of the vast implications behind the truth of impermanence. It is as if all our lives we've been flying in an airplane through the dark clouds and turbulence, when suddenly the plane soars above these into the clear, boundless sky. Inspired and exhilarated by this emergence into a new dimension of freedom, we come to uncover a depth of peace, joy and confidence in ourselves that fills us with wonder and breeds in us gradually a certainty that there is something, that nothing destroys, that nothing alters, and that cannot die. As Milarepa wrote, "In horror of death, I took to the mountains. Again and again, I meditated on the uncertainty of the hour of death. Capturing the fortress of the deathless, unending nature mind, now all fear of death is over and done." Gradually then, we become aware in ourselves of the calm and sky-like presence of what Milarepa calls the deathless, unending nature mind. And as this new awareness begins to become vivid and almost unbroken, there occurs what the Upanishads call a turning about in the seat of consciousness. A personal, utterly non-conceptual revelation of what we are, why we are here, and how we should act, which amounts in the end to nothing less than a new life, a new birth, almost you could say, a resurrection. What a beautiful and what a healing mystery it is that from contemplating continually and fearlessly the truth of change and impermanence, we come slowly to find ourselves face to face in gratitude and joy with the truth of changeless, with the truth of deathless, unending nature of mind. The true revolutionary insight of Buddhism is that life and death are in the mind and nowhere else. Mind is revealed as the universal basis of experience, the creator of happiness and the creator of suffering, the creator of what we call life and what we call death. There are many aspects to the mind, but two stand out. The first is the ordinary mind, called by the Tibetan Sem. One master defines it: that which possesses discriminating awareness, that which possesses a sense of duality, which grasps or rejects something external, that is mind. Fundamentally, it is that which can associate with an other, with any something that is perceived as different from the perceiver. Sem is the discursive, dualistic thinking mind which can only function in relation to a projected and falsely perceived external reference point. So, Sem is the mind that thinks, plots, desires, manipulates, that flares up in anger, that creates and indulges in waves of negative emotions and thoughts, that has to go on and on, asserting, validating, and confirming its existence by fragmenting, conceptualizing, and solidifying experience. The ordinary mind is the ceaselessly shifting and shiftless prey of external influences, habitual tendencies, and conditioning. The masters liken Sem to a candle flame in an open doorway, vulnerable to all the winds of circumstance. Seen from one angle, Sem is flickering, unstable, grasping, and endlessly minding others' business, its energy consumed by projecting outwards. I think of it as sometimes as a Mexican jumping bean, or as a monkey hopping restlessly from branch to branch on a tree. Yet seen in another way, the ordinary mind has a false, dull stability, a smug and self-protective inertia, a stone-like calm of ingrained habits. Sem is as cunning as a crooked politician, skeptical, distrustful, expert at trickery and guile, ingenious Jamankensha wrote, in the games of deception. It is within the experience of this chaotic, confused, undisciplined and repetitive SEM, this ordinary mind, that again and again we undergo change and death. Then there is the very nature of mind, its innermost essence, which is absolutely and always untouched by change or death. At present it is hidden within our own mind, our SEM, enveloped and obscured by the mental scurry of our thought and emotions. Just as clouds can be shifted by a strong gust of wind to reveal the shining and wide open sky, so under certain special circumstances some inspiration may uncover for us glimpses of this nature of mind. These glimpses have many depths and degrees, but each of them will bring some light of understanding, meaning and freedom. This is because the nature of mind is the very root itself of understanding. In Tibetan we call it Rigpa, a primordial, pure, pristine awareness that is at once intelligent, cognizant, radiant and always awake. It could be said to be the knowledge of knowledge itself. Do not make the mistake of imagining that the nature of mind is exclusive to our mind only. It is in fact the nature of everything. It can never be said too often that to realize the nature of mind is to realize the nature of all things. Saints and mystics throughout the history have adorned their realization with different names and given them different faces and interpretations. But what they are all fundamentally experiencing is the essential nature of the mind. The Christians and Jews call it God, the Hindus call it the Self, the Shiva, the Brahman and the Vishnu. Sufi mystics name it the hidden essence. The Buddhists call it the Buddha nature. At the heart of all religions is the certainty that there is a fundamental truth, and this life is a sacred opportunity to evolve and realize it. When we say Buddha, we naturally think of the Indian prince Gautama Siddhartha, who reached enlightenment in the 6th century BC, and who taught the spiritual path followed by millions all over Asia, known today as Buddhism. Buddha, however, has a much more deeper meaning. It means a person, any person, who has completely awakened from ignorance and opened to his or her vast potential of wisdom. A Buddha is one who has brought a final end to suffering and frustration and discovered a lasting and deathless happiness and peace. But for many of us in the skeptical age, the state may seem like a fantasy or a dream or an achievement far beyond our reach. It is important to remember always that Buddha was a human being like you or me. He never claimed divinity. He merely knew he had the Buddha nature, the seed of enlightenment, and that everyone else did too. The Buddha nature is simply the birthright of every sentient being. And I always say, our Buddha nature is as good as any Buddha's Buddha nature. This is the good news that Buddha brought us from his enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, and which many people find so inspiring. His message that enlightenment is within the reach of all holds out tremendous hope. Through practice, we too can all become awakened. And if this were not true, countless individuals down to the present day would not have become enlightened. It is said that when Buddha attained enlightenment, all he wanted to do was to show the rest of us the nature of mind and share completely what he had realized. But he also saw, with the sorrow of infinite compassion, how difficult it would be for us to understand. For even though we have the same inner nature as the Buddha, we have not recognized it because it is so enclosed and wrapped up in our ordinary individual minds. Imagine an empty vase. The space inside is exactly the same as outside. Only the fragile walls of the vase separate one from the other. Our Buddha mind is enclosed within the walls of our ordinary mind, but when we become enlightened, it is as if that vase shatters into pieces. The space inside merges instantly into the space outside, and they become one. There and then we realize that they were never separate or different. They were always the same. So whatever our lives are like, our Buddha nature is always there. And it is always perfect. We say that not even the Buddhas can improve it in their infinite wisdom, nor can sentient beings spoil it in their seemingly infinite confusion. Our true nature could be compared to the sky and the confusion of the ordinary mind to clouds. Someday the sky is completely obscured by clouds, and when we are down on the ground looking up, it is very difficult to believe that there is anything else there but clouds. Yet we only have to fly in a plane to discover up above a limitless expanse of clear blue sky. From up there, the clouds we assumed were everything seems so small and so far down below. We should always try and remember the clouds are not the sky and do not belong to it. They only hang there and pass by in their slightly ridiculous and non-dependent fashion. And they can never stain or mark the sky in any way. So, where exactly is this Buddha nature? It is in the sky-like nature of our mind, utterly open, free and limitless. It is fundamentally so simple and so natural that it can never be complicated or corrupted or stained, so pure that it is beyond even the concept of purity and impurity. To talk of this nature mind as sky-like, of course, is only a metaphor that helps us to begin to imagine its all-embracing boundlessness. For the Buddha nature has a quality the sky cannot have, that of a radiant clarity of awareness. As it is said, it is simply your flawless, present awareness, cognizant and empty, naked and awake. Dujun Rinpoche wrote, no words can describe it, no example can point to it. Samsara does not make it worse, Nirvana does not make it better. It has never been born, it has never ceased, it has never been liberated, it has never been deluded. It has never existed, it has never been non-existent. It has no limits at all, it does not fall into any kind of category. Tujin Rinpoche said, profound and tranquil, free from complexity, uncompounded luminous clarity, beyond the mind of conceptual ideas, this is the depth of the mind of the victorious ones. In this, there is not a thing to be removed, nor anything that needs to be added. It is merely the immaculate, looking naturally at itself.
Why is it that people should find it so difficult even to conceive of the depth and glory of the nature of mind? We have been taught to spend our lives chasing our thoughts and projections. Even when mind is talked about, what is referred to is thoughts and emotions alone. And when our researchers study what they imagine to be the mind, they look only at its projections. No one ever really looks into the mind itself, the ground from which all these expressions arise, and this has tragic consequences. How can we now turn this situation around? It is very simple. Our minds have two positions, looking out and looking in. Let us now look in. The difference that this slight change in orientation could make is enormous, and might even reverse those disasters that threaten the world. When a much larger number of people know the nature of their minds, they'll know also the glorious nature of the world they're in, and struggle urgently and bravely to preserve it. It's interesting that the word for Buddhist in Tibetan is Nangpa. It means inside-er, someone who seeks the truth not outside, but within the nature of mind. All the teachings and training in Buddhism are aimed at that one single point, to look into the nature of the mind, and so free us from the fear of death, and help us realize the truth of life. Spiritual truth is not something elaborate and esoteric. It is in fact profound common sense. When you realize the nature of mind, layers of confusion peel away. You don't actually become a Buddha. You simply cease slowly to be deluded. And being a Buddha is not being some omnipotent spiritual Superman, but becoming at last a true human being. What the Buddha saw when he became enlightened was that ignorance of our true nature is the root of all the torment of samsara, and the root of ignorance itself is our mind's habitual tendency to distraction. To end the mind's distraction would be to end samsara itself. The key to this, he realized, is to bring the mind home to its true nature through the practice of meditation. Generally, we waste our lives, distracted from our true selves, in endless activity. Meditation, on the other hand, is the way to bring us back to ourselves, where we can really experience and taste our full being beyond all habitual patterns. To meditate is to make a complete break with how we normally operate, for it is a state free of all cares and concerns, in which there is no competition, no desire to possess or grasp at anything, no intense and anxious struggle, and no hunger to achieve, an ambitionless state where there is neither acceptance nor rejection, neither hope nor fear. A state in which we slowly begin to release all those emotions and concepts that have imprisoned us into the space of natural simplicity. The Buddhist meditation masters know how flexible and workable the mind is. If we train it, anything is possible. With time, patience, discipline, and the right training, our mind will begin to unknot itself and know its essential bliss and clarity. Training the mind does not in any way mean forcibly subjugating or brainwashing the mind. To train the mind is first to see directly and concretely how the mind functions, a knowledge that you derive from spiritual teachings and through personal experience in meditation practice. Then you can use that understanding to tame the mind and work with it skillfully, to make it more and more pliable, so that you can become master of your own mind and employ it to its fullest and most beneficial end. The 8th century Buddhist master Shantideva said, "If this elephant of mind is bound on all sides by the cord of mindfulness, all fear disappears, and complete happiness comes. All enemies, all the tigers, lions, elephants, bears, serpents, of our emotions, and all the keepers of hell, the demons and the horrors, all of these are bound by the mastery of your mind, and by the taming of that one mind, all are subdued, because from the mind are derived all fears and immeasurable sorrows. The purpose of meditation is to awaken in us the sky-like nature of mind, and to introduce us to that which we really are, our unchanging pure awareness, which underlies the whole of life and death. We are fragmented into so many different aspects. We don't know who we really are, or what aspects of ourselves we should identify with or believe in. So many contradictory voices, dictates and feelings fight for control over our inner lives that we find ourselves scattered everywhere, in all directions, leaving nobody at home. Meditation, then, is bringing the mind home. In the teaching of Buddha, we say there are three things that make all the difference between your meditation being merely a way of bringing temporary relaxation, peace and bliss, or of becoming a powerful cause for your enlightenment and the enlightenment of others. We call them good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Good in the beginning springs from the awareness that we and all sentient beings fundamentally have the Buddha nature as our innermost essence, and that to realize it is to be free of ignorance and to put an end, finally, to suffering. So each time we begin our practice of meditation, we are moved by this, and inspire ourselves with the motivation to dedicate our practice and our life to the enlightenment of all beings in the spirit of this prayer, which all the Buddhas of the past have prayed. By the power and the truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is sorrowless. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment and too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives. Good in the middle is the frame of mind with which we enter into the heart of the practice, one inspired by the realization of the nature of mind, from which arises an attitude of non-grasping, free of any conceptual reference whatsoever, and an awareness that all things are inherently empty, illusory, and dreamlike. Good at the end is the way in which we bring our meditation to a close, by dedicating all its merit and praying with real fervor. May whatever merit that comes from this practice go toward the enlightenment of all beings. May it become a drop in the ocean of the activity of all the Buddhas in their tireless work for the liberation of all beings. Merit is the positive power and benefit, the peace and happiness that radiate from your practice. You dedicate this merit for the long-term ultimate benefit of beings, for their enlightenment. On a more immediate level, you dedicate it so that there may be peace in the world, so that everyone may be entirely free of want and illness, and experience total well-being and lasting happiness. Then, realizing the illusory and dreamlike nature of reality, you reflect on how, in the deepest sense, you who are dedicating your practice, those to whom you are dedicating it, and even the very act of dedication, are all inherently empty and illusory. This is said in the teachings to seal the meditation, and ensure that none of its pure power can leak or seep away, and so ensure that none of the merit of your practice is ever wasted. These three sacred principles, the skillful motivation, the attitude of non-grasping that secures the practice, and the dedication that seals it, are what make your meditation truly enlightening and powerful. They have been beautifully described by the great Tibetan master, Longchenpa, as the heart, the eye, and the life force of true practice. As Nusho Kempo says, to accomplish complete enlightenment, more than this is not necessary, but less than this is incomplete. Meditation is bringing the mind back home, and this is first achieved through the practice of mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness, of bringing the scattered mind home, and so of bringing the different aspects of our being into focus, is called peacefully remaining, or calm abiding. Peacefully remaining accomplishes three things. First, all the fragmented aspects of ourselves which have been at war settle and dissolve and become friends. In that settling, we begin to understand ourselves more, and sometimes even have glimpses of the radiance of our fundamental nature. Second, the practice of mindfulness diffuses our negativity, aggression, and turbulent emotions, which may have been gathering power over many lifetimes. Rather than suppressing emotions or indulging in them, here it is important to view them and your thoughts, and whatever arises, with an acceptance and generosity that are as open and spacious as possible. Tibetan masters say that this wise generosity has the flavor of boundless space, so warm and cozy that you feel enveloped and protected by it, as if by a blanket of sunlight. Third, this practice unveils and reveals your essential good heart, because it dissolves and removes the unkindness or the harm in you. Only when we have removed the harm in ourselves do we become truly useful to others. Through the practice, then, by slowly removing the unkindness and harm from ourselves, we allow our true good heart, the fundamental goodness and kindness that are our real nature, to shine out and become the warm climate in which our true being flowers. Meditation is the true practice of peace, the true practice of non-aggression and non-violence, and the real and greatest disarmament.
When I teach meditation, I often begin by saying, bring your mind home, release the grasping, and relax into your nature. The whole point of meditation practice can be essentialized into these three crucial points. That is, bringing your mind home, releasing the grasping, and relaxing in your nature. Each phrase contains meaning that resonate on many levels. To bring your mind home means to bring the mind into the state of calm abiding through the practice of mindfulness. In its deepest sense, to bring your mind home is to turn your mind inward and to rest in the nature mind. This itself is the highest meditation. To release means to release mind from its prison of grasping, since you recognize that all pain and fear and distress rise from the craving of the grasping mind. On a deeper level, the realization and the confidence that rise from your growing understanding of the nature mind inspires the profound and natural generosity that enables you to release all your grasping from your heart and letting it free itself to melt away in the inspiration of meditation. Finally, to relax means to be spacious and to relax the mind of its tensions. More deeply, you relax into true nature of your mind, the state of Rigpa. The Tibetan word that evokes the process suggests the sense of relaxing upon the Rigpa. It is like pouring a handful of sand onto a flat surface. Each grain settles of its own accord. This is how you relax into your true nature, letting all thoughts and emotions naturally subside and dissolve into the state of the nature mind. When I meditate, I'm always inspired by the poem by Nyushi Khenpo. Rest in natural great peace, this exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thought, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves, in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. Above all, be at ease, be as natural and spacious as possible. Slip quietly out of the noose of your habitual anxious self. Release all grasping and relax into your true nature. Think of your ordinary emotional thought-ridden self as a block of ice or a slab of butter left out in the sun. If you're feeling hard or cold, let this aggression melt away in the sunlight of your meditation. Let peace work on you and enable you to gather your scattered mind into the mindfulness of calm abiding, and awaken in you the awareness of the insight of clear seeing. And you will find that all your negativity disarmed, your aggression dissolved, and your confusion evaporating slowly like the mist into the vast and stainless sky of your absolute nature. Quietly sitting, body still, speech silent, mind at peace, your thoughts and emotions, whatever rises, come and go without clinging to anything. What does the state feel like? The Junummite used to say, imagine a man who comes home after a long, hard day's work in the fields and sinks into his favorite chair in front of the fire. He has been working all day and he knows that he has achieved what he wanted to achieve. There's nothing more to worry about, nothing left accomplished. And he can let go completely of all his cares and concerns, content simply to be. So when you meditate, it is essential to create the right inner environment of the mind. All effort and struggle come from not being spacious. So creating that right environment is vital for your meditation to truly happen. The Masters say, if you create an auspicious condition in your body and your environment, then meditation and realization will automatically rise. When humor and spaciousness are present, meditation rises effortlessly. Sometimes when I meditate, I don't use any particular method. I just allow my mind to rest and find, especially when I'm inspired, that I can bring my mind home and relax very quickly. I sit quietly and rest in the nature of mind. I don't question or doubt whether I'm in the correct state or not. There is no effort, only rich understanding, wakefulness, and unshakable certainty. When I'm in that nature of mind, the ordinary mind is no longer there. There is no need to sustain or confirm a sense of being. I simply am. A fundamental trust is present. There is nothing in particular to do.
If your mind is able to settle naturally of its own accord, and if you are inspired simply to rest in its pure awareness, then you do not need any method of meditation. In fact, it might even be unskillful when you're in such a state to try to employ one. However, the vast majority of us find it difficult to arrive at that state straight away. We simply do not know how to awaken it, and our minds are so wild and so distracted that we need a skillful means, a method to evoke it. But remember, a method is only a means, not the meditation itself. It is through practicing the method skillfully that you reach the perfection of that pure state of total presence, which is the real meditation. As you continue to practice the method, then meditation slowly arises. Meditation is not something that you can do, it is something that has to happen spontaneously, only when we have perfected the practice. By far the most important feature of meditation is not the technique, but the spirit, the skillful, inspired and creative way in which we practice, which could also be called the posture. There is a connection between the posture of the body and the attitude of the mind. Mind and body are interrelated, and meditation arises naturally once your posture and attitude are inspired. The posture explained here may differ slightly from others you may be used to. It comes from the ancient teachings of Dzogchen. In the Dzogchen teachings, it is said that your view and your posture should be like a mountain. Your view is the summation of your whole understanding and insight into the nature of mind, which you bring to your meditation. So your view translates into and inspires your posture, expressing the core of your being in the way you sit. Sit then as if you were a mountain, with all the unshakable, steadfast majesty of a mountain. A mountain is completely natural and at ease with itself, however strong the winds that batter it, however thick the dark clouds that swirl around its peak. Sitting like a mountain, let your mind rise and fly and soar. The most essential point of this posture is to keep the back straight, like an arrow or a pile of golden coins. The inner energy or prana will then flow easily through the subtle channels of the body, and your mind will find its true state of rest. Don't force anything. The lower part of the spine has a natural curve. It should be relaxed but upright. Your head should be balanced comfortably on your neck. It is your shoulders and the upper part of your torso that carry the strength and grace of the posture, and they should be held in strong poise, but without any tension. Sit with your legs crossed. You do not have to sit in the full lotus posture, which is emphasized more in advanced yoga practice. The crossed legs express the unity of life and death, good and bad, skillful means and wisdom, masculine and feminine principles, samsara and nirvana, the humor of non-duality. You may also choose to sit on a chair, with your legs relaxed, but be sure always to keep your back straight. Your eyes should be kept open. This is a very important point. If you are sensitive to disturbances from outside, when you begin to practice, you may find it helpful to close your eyes for a while and quietly turn within. Once you feel established in calm, gradually open your eyes, and you will find your gaze has grown more peaceful and tranquil. Now look downwards, along the line of your nose, at an angle of about 45 degrees in front of you. One practical tip in general is that whenever your mind is wild, it is best to lower your gaze, and whenever it is dull and sleepy, to bring the gaze up. Once your mind is calm and the clarity of insight begins to arise, you will feel free to bring your gaze up, opening your eyes more and looking into the space directly in front of you. This is the gaze recommended in the Dzogchen practice. In the Dzogchen teachings, it is said that your meditation and your gaze should be like the vast expanse of a great ocean, all-pervading, open, and limitless. Just as your view and posture are inseparable, so your meditation inspires your gaze, and they now merge as one. Do not focus then on anything in particular. Instead, turn back into yourself slightly, and let your gaze expand and become more and more spacious and pervasive. You will discover now that your vision itself becomes more expansive, and that there is more peace, more compassion in your gaze, more equanimity and more poise. There are several reasons for keeping the eyes open. With the eyes open, you are less likely to fall asleep. Then meditation is not a means of running away from the world, or of escaping from it into a trance-like experience of an altered state of consciousness. On the contrary, it is a direct way to help us truly understand ourselves and relate to life and the world. When you meditate, keep your mouth slightly open, as if about to say a deep, relaxing "ah." By keeping the mouth slightly open and breathing mainly through the mouth, it is said that the karmic winds that create discursive thoughts are normally less likely to arise and create obstacles in your mind and meditation. Rest your hands comfortably covering your knees. This is called the mind in comfort and ease posture. There is a spark of hope, a playful humor about this posture, which lies in the secret understanding that we all have the Buddha nature. So when you assume this posture, you are playfully imitating a Buddha, acknowledging and giving real encouragement to the emergence of your own Buddha nature.
The Buddha taught 84,000 different ways to tame and pacify negative emotions, and in Buddhism there are countless methods of meditation. The following meditation techniques are particularly effective in the modern world. Anyone can use and benefit from them. They are watching the breath, using an object, and reciting a mantra. The first method is very ancient and found in all schools of Buddhism. It is to rest your attention lightly and mindfully on the breath. The breath, or prana in Sanskrit, is said to be the vehicle of the mind, because it is the prana that makes our mind move. So when you calm the mind by working skillfully with the breath, you are simultaneously and automatically taming and training the mind. Haven't we all experienced how relaxing it can be when life becomes stressful to be alone for a few minutes and just breathe in and out? Even such a simple exercise can help us a great. So when you meditate, breathe naturally, just as you always do. Focus your awareness lightly on the out-breath. When you breathe out, just flow out with the out-breath. Each time you breathe out, you are letting go and releasing all your grasping. Imagine your breath dissolving into the all-pervading expanse of truth. Each time you breathe out, and before you breathe in again, you will find that there will be a natural gap as the grasping dissolves. Rest in that gap, in that open space. And when naturally you breathe in, don't focus especially on the in-breath, but go on resting your mind in the gap that has opened up. When you are practicing, it's important not to get involved in mental commentary, analysis, or internal gossip. Do not mistake the running commentary in your mind. Now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out, for mindfulness. What is important is pure presence. Don't concentrate too much on the breath. Give it about 25% of your attention, with the other 75% quietly and spaciously relaxed. As you become more mindful of your breathing, you will find that you become more and more present. Gather all your scattered aspects back into yourself and become whole. Rather than watching the breath, let yourself gradually identify with it, as if you were becoming it. Slowly the breath, the breather, and the breathing become one. duality and separation dissolve. You will find that this very simple process of mindfulness filters your thoughts and emotions. Then, as if you were shedding an old skin, something is peeled off and freed. Some people, however, are not relaxed or at ease with watching the breathing. They find it almost claustrophobic. For them, the next technique might be more helpful. The second method, which many people find useful, is to rest the mind lightly on an object. You can use an object of natural beauty that invokes a special feeling of inspiration for you, such as a flower or crystal. But something that embodies the truth, such as an image of the Buddha or Christ, or particularly your Master, is even more powerful. Your Master is your living link with the truth, and because of your personal connection to your Master, just seeing his or her face connects you to the inspiration and truth of your own nature. Lightly set your attention on the object. Then leave your mind quietly at peace. A third technique, used a great deal in Tibetan Buddhism and also in Sufism, Orthodox Christianity and Hinduism, is uniting the mind with the sound of a mantra. The definition of mantra is that which protects the mind. That which protects the mind from negativity, or that which protects you from your own mind, is called mantra. When you are nervous, disoriented, or emotionally fragile, chanting or reciting a mantra inspiringly can change the state of your mind completely by transforming its energy and atmosphere. How is this possible? Mantra is the essence of sound and the embodiment of the truth in the form of sound. Each syllable is impregnated with spiritual power, condenses a spiritual truth, and vibrates with the blessing of the speech of the Buddhas. It is also said that the mind rides on the subtle energy of the breath, the prana, which moves through and purifies the subtle channels of the body. So when you chant a mantra, you are charging your breath and energy with the energy of the mantra, and so working directly on your mind and subtle body. The mantra Sogyal Rinpoche recommends to his students is Om Ahung Venza Guru Pedma Siddhi Hung, which is the mantra of Padmasambhava, the mantra of all the Buddhas, masters, and realized beings, and so uniquely powerful for peace, for healing, for transformation, and for protection in this violent, chaotic age. Recite the mantra quietly, with deep attention, and let your breath, the mantra, and your awareness become slowly one. Or chant it in an inspiring way, and rest in the profound silence that sometimes follows. What, then, should we do with the mind in meditation? Nothing at all. Just leave it, simply, as it is. One master described meditation as mind suspended in space, nowhere. There is a famous saying, if the mind is not contrived, it is spontaneously blissful, just as water, when not agitated, is by nature transparent and clear. The mind in meditation could be compared to a jar of muddy water. The more we leave the water without interfering or stirring it, the more the particles of dirt will sink to the bottom, letting the natural clarity of the water shine through. The very nature of the mind is such that if you only leave it in its unaltered and natural state, it will find its true nature, which is bliss and clarity. So take care not to impose anything on the mind or to tax it. When you meditate, there should be no effort to control and no attempt to be peaceful. Don't be overly solemn or feel that you are taking part in some special ritual. Let go even of the idea that you are meditating. Let your body remain as it is, and your breath as you find it. Think of yourself as the sky, holding the whole universe. In meditation, as in all arts, there has to be a delicate balance between relaxation and alertness. One of the greatest of Tibet's many woman masters, Machik Labdung, said, "Alert, alert, yet relax, relax." This is a crucial point for the view in meditation. Alert your alertness, but at the same time be relaxed, so relaxed in fact that you don't even hold on to an idea of relaxation.
When people begin to meditate, they often say that their thoughts are running riot and have become wilder than ever before. This is a good sign. Far from meaning that your thoughts have become wilder, it shows that you have become quieter, and you are finally aware of just how noisy your thoughts have always been. Don't be disheartened or give up. Whatever arises, just keep being present. Keep returning to the breath, even in the midst of all the confusion. Sometimes people think that when they meditate there should be no thoughts and emotions at all, and when thoughts and emotions do arise, they become annoyed and exasperated with themselves and think they have failed. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is a Tibetan saying, "It's a tall order to ask for meat without bones and tea without leaves." So long as you have a mind, there will be thoughts and emotions. Thoughts and emotions are the radiance and expression of the very nature of the mind. They arise from the mind, but where do they dissolve? Back into the mind. Whatever rises, do not see it as a particular problem. If you do not impulsively react, if you are only patient, it will once again settle into its essential nature. When you have this understanding, then rising thoughts only enhance your practice. But when you do not understand what they intrinsically are, the radiance of the nature of your mind, then your thoughts become the seed of confusion. So have a spacious, open, and compassionate attitude toward your thoughts and emotions. Because in fact, your thoughts are your family, the family of your mind. Before them, as Dujom Rinpoche used to say, be like an old wise man watching a child play. So whatever thoughts and emotions arise, allow them to rise and settle like the waves in the ocean. Whatever you find yourself thinking, let that thought rise and settle without any constraint. Don't grasp at it, feed it, or indulge it. Don't cling to it, and don't try to solidify it. Neither follow thoughts nor invite them. Be like the ocean, looking at its own waves, or the sky gazing down on the clouds that pass through it. You will soon find that thoughts are like the wind. They come and go. The secret is not to think about thoughts, but to allow them to flow through the mind, while keeping your mind free of afterthoughts. As you continue to practice, you may have all kinds of experiences, both good and bad. You might experience states of bliss, clarity, or absence of thoughts. By themselves, they are good experiences, But if you get attached to them, they become obstacles. Experiences are not realization in themselves, but if we remain free of attachment to them, they become what they really are, that is, materials for realization. Negative experiences are often the most misleading, because we usually take them as a bad sign. But in fact, the negative experiences in our practice are blessings in disguise. Try not to react to them with aversion as you might normally do, but recognize them instead for what they truly are, merely experiences, illusory and dreamlike. The realization of the true nature of the experience liberates you from the harm or danger of the experience itself, and as a result, even a negative experience can become a source of great blessing and accomplishment. Traditionally, it's said that for a real practitioner, it's not the negative experiences but the good ones that bring obstacles. When things are going well, you have got to be especially careful and mindful so that you don't become complacent or overconfident. What we have to learn, in both meditation and in life, is to be free of attachment to the good experiences and free of aversion to the negative ones. Dujom Rinpoche warns us of another pitfall. On the other hand, in meditation practice, you might experience a muddy, semi-conscious drifting state, like having a hood over your head, a dreamy dullness. This is really nothing more than a kind of blurred and mindless stagnation. How do you get out of this state? Alert yourself. Straighten your back, breathe the stale air out of your lungs, and direct your awareness into clear space to freshen your mind. If you remain in this stagnant state, you will not evolve. So whenever this setback arises, clear it again and again. It is important to be as watchful as possible and to stay as vigilant as you can. Whatever method you use, drop it or simply let it dissolve on its own when you find you have arrived naturally at a state of alert, expansive and vibrant peace. Then continue to remain there quietly, undistracted, without necessarily using any particular method. The method has already achieved its purpose. However, if you do stray or become distracted, then return to whatever technique is most appropriate to call you back. Dujom Rinpoche used to say that a beginner should practice in short sessions. Practice for 4 or 5 minutes, and then take a short break for just 1 minute. But be mindful of whatever you do, and do not lose your presence and its natural ease. Then alert yourself and sit again. If you do many short sessions like this, your breaks will often make your meditation more real and more inspiring. They will take the clumsy, irksome rigidity and solemnity and unnaturalness out of your practice, and bring you more and more focus and ease. Gradually, through this interplay of breaks and sitting, the barrier between meditation and everyday life will crumble. The contrast between them will dissolve, and you will find yourself in. Then, as Dujom Rinpoche used to say, even though the meditation will not leave the meditator. To create meditation in action is the whole ground and point and purpose of integration. How then do we achieve this integration? This permeation of everyday life with the calm humour and spacious detachment of meditation. There is no substitute for regular practice. For only through real practice will we begin to taste unbrokenly the calm of our nature of mind, and so be able to sustain the experience of it in our everyday life. Be mindful not to come out of meditation too quickly. Allow a period of some minutes for the peace of the practice of meditation to infiltrate your life. Dujom Rinpoche said, "Don't jump up and rush off, but mingle your mindfulness with everyday life. Be like a man who's fractured his skull, always careful in case someone will touch him. Then, after meditation, it's important not to give in to the tendency we have to solidify the way we perceive things. When you do re-enter everyday life, let the wisdom, insight, compassion, humour, fluidity, spaciousness, and detachment that meditation brought you pervade your day-to-day experience. Meditation awakens in you the realization of how the nature of everything is illusory and dreamlike. Maintain that awareness, even in the thick of samsara. And if you really wish to achieve this, what you need to do is not just practice as an occasional medicine or therapy, but as if it were your daily sustenance or food. This is why one excellent way to develop this power of integration is to practice it in a retreat environment, far from stresses of modern city life. All too often, people come to meditation in the hope of extraordinary results, like visions, lights, or some supernatural miracle. When no such thing occurs, they feel extremely disappointed. But the real miracle of meditation is more ordinary and much more useful. It is a subtle transformation. And this transformation happens not only in your mind and your emotions, but also actually in your body. It is very healing. The whole state of your health has a lot to do with your state of mind and your way of being. If you find that meditation does not come easily in your city room, be inventive and go out into nature. Nature is always an unfailing fountain of inspiration. To calm your mind, go for a walk at dawn in the park, or watch the dew on a rose in a garden. Lie on the ground and gaze up into the sky, and let your mind expand into its spaciousness. Let the sky outside awake a sky inside your mind. Stand by a stream and mingle your mind with its rushing. Become one with its ceaseless sound. Sit by a waterfall and let its healing laughter purify your spirit. Walk on a beach and take the sea wind full and sweet against your face. Celebrate and use the beauty of moonlight to poise your mind. Sit by a lake or in a garden and breathing quietly, let your mind fall silent as the moon comes up, majestically and slowly in the cloudless night.
Since the dawn of history, reincarnation and a firm faith in life after death have occupied an essential place in nearly all the world's religions. Since the advent of interest in Eastern religions that began at the end of the last century, a remarkable number of Westerners have come to accept the Hindu and Buddhist knowledge of rebirth. However, most people have still only the most shadowy idea about life after death and no idea of what it might be like. Again and again, people say they cannot bring themselves to believe in something for which there is no evidence. But that is hardly any proof, is it, that it does not exist? As Voltaire said, after all, it is no more surprising to be born twice than it is to be born once. Why do all the major religions believe in a life after this one? And why have hundreds of millions of people throughout history, including the great philosophers, sages and creative geniuses of Asia, live this belief as an essential part of their lives? Were they all simply deluded? Those of us who undertake a spiritual discipline, of meditation for example, come to discover many things about our own mind that we did not know before. For as our mind opens more and more to the extraordinary, vast and hitherto unsuspected existence of the nature of mind, we begin to glimpse a completely different dimension, one in which all of our assumptions about our identity and reality, which we thought we knew so well, start to dissolve, and in which the possibility of lives other than this one becomes at least likely. We begin to understand that everything that we are being told by the masters about life and death and life after death is real. From the Buddhist point of view, the main argument that establishes rebirth is one based on a profound understanding of the continuity of mind. Where does consciousness come from? It cannot arise out of nowhere. A moment of consciousness cannot arise without the moment of consciousness that immediately preceded it. The basis on which Buddhists accept the concept of rebirth is principally the continuity of consciousness. Most people take the word reincarnation to imply there is some thing that reincarnates, which travels from life to life. But in Buddhism we do not believe in an independent and unchanging entity like a soul or ego that survives the death of the body. What provides the continuity between lives is not an entity, we believe, but the ultimately subtlest level of consciousness. The exact way in which rebirth takes place has been well illustrated with the following example. The successive existences in a series of rebirths are not like the pearls in a pearl necklace held together by a string, the soul which passes through all the pearls. Rather, they are like dice piled one on top of the other. Each die is separate, but it supports the one above it, with which it is functionally connected. Between the dice there is no identity, but conditionality. The truth and driving force behind rebirth is what is called karma. Karma is often totally misunderstood in the West as fate or predestination. It is best thought of as the infallible law of cause and effect that governs the universe. The word karma literally means action, and karma is both the power latent within actions and the results that our actions bring. In simple terms, what does karma mean? It means that whatever we do with our body, speech or mind will have a corresponding result. Each action, even the smallest, is pregnant with its consequences. The results of our actions are often delayed, even into future lifetimes. We cannot pin down one cause because any event can be an extremely complicated mixture of many karmas ripening together. So we tend to assume now that things happen to us by chance, and when everything goes well we simply call it good luck. And yet, what else but karma could really begin to explain satisfyingly the extreme and extraordinary differences between each of us? Even though we may be born in the same family or country or in similar circumstances, we all have different characters. Totally different things happen to us. We have different talents, inclinations, and destinies. As Buddha said, what you are is what you have been, what you will be is what you do now. Padmasambhava went further. If you want to know your past life, look into your present condition. If you want to know your future life, look at your present actions. The kind of birth we will have in the next life is determined then by the nature of our actions in this one. And it is important never to forget that the effect of our actions depends entirely upon because the law of karma is inevitable and infallible. Whenever we harm others, we are directly harming ourselves. Whenever we bring them happiness, we are bringing ourselves future happiness. The belief in reincarnation shows us that there is some kind of ultimate justice or goodness in the universe. So if you were to draw one essential message from the fact of reincarnation, it would be, develop this good heart that longs for other beings to find lasting happiness and acts to secure that happiness. Nourish and practice kindness. Karma then is not fatalistic or predetermined. Karma means our ability to create and to change. It is creative because we can determine how and why we act. We can change. The future is in our hands and in the hands of our heart. Whatever is happening to us now mirrors our past karma. if we know that, and know it really, whenever suffering or difficulties befall us, we do not view them particularly as a failure or catastrophe, or see suffering as a punishment in any way. Nor do we blame ourselves or indulge in self-hatred. We see the pain we are going through as the completion of the effects, the fruition of a past karma. But if we do observe the law of karma and awaken in ourselves the good heart of love and compassion, if we purify our mind stream and gradually awaken the wisdom of the nature of our mind, then we can become a truly human being and ultimately enlightened. Bardo is a Tibetan word that simply means a transition or a gap between the completion of one situation and the onset of another. Bar means in between, and do means suspended or thrown. Bardo is a word made famous by the popularity of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The title Tibetan Book of the Dead was coined by its translator, the American scholar W.Y. Evans Wentz. The actual name of this book translates as The Great Liberation Through Hearing in the Bardo. Bardo teachings are extremely ancient and found in what are called the Dzogchen Tantras. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is a kind of guidebook or travel log of the after-death states, which is designed to be read by a master or spiritual friend to a person as the person dies and after death. It is designed for a practitioner or someone who's familiar with its teachings. For a modern reader, it is extremely difficult to penetrate and raises a lot of questions that simply cannot be answered without some knowledge of the tradition that gave birth to it. This is especially the case since the book cannot be fully understood and used without knowing the unwritten oral instructions that a master transmits to a disciple, and which are the key to its practice. Because of the popularity of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, people usually associate the word Bardo with death. It is true that Bardo is used in everyday speech among Tibetans for the intermediate state between death and rebirth, but it has a much wider and deeper meaning. We can divide the whole of our existence into four realities: life, dying and death, after death, and rebirth. These are the four Bardos: the natural Bardo of this life, the painful Bardo of dying, the luminous Bardo of Dharmata, the karmic Bardo of becoming. The natural Bardo of this life spans the entire period between birth and death. In our present state of knowledge, this may seem more than just a bardo, a transition. But if we think about it, it will become clear that, compared to the enormous length and duration of our karmic history, the time we spend in this life is in fact relatively short. The teachings tell us emphatically that the bardo of this life is the only and therefore the best time to prepare for death, by becoming familiar with the teaching and by stabilizing the practice. The painful bardo of dying lasts from the beginning of the process of dying right up until the end of what is known as the inner respiration. This in turn culminates in the dawning of the nature of mind, what we call the ground luminosity at the moment of death. The luminous bardo of Dharmata encompasses the after-death experience of the radiance of the nature of mind, the luminosity or clear light, which manifests as sound, color, and light. The karmic bardo of becoming is what we generally call the bardo or intermediate state, which lasts right up until the moment we take on a new birth. What distinguishes and defines each of the bardos is that they are all gaps or periods in which the possibility of awakening is particularly present. Opportunities for liberation are occurring continuously and uninterruptedly through life and death, and the Bardo teachings are the key or tool that enables us to discover and recognize them and to make the fullest possible use of them. One of the central characteristics of the Bardos is that they are periods of deep uncertainty. Take this life as a prime example. As the world around us becomes more turbulent, so our lives become more fragmented. Out of touch and disconnected from ourselves, we are anxious, restless, and often paranoid. This uncertainty, which already pervades everything now, becomes even more intense, even more accentuated after we die, when our clarity or confusion, the masters tell us, will be multiplied by 7. This shows us what the Bardo is: a continuous, unnerving oscillation between clarity and confusion, bewilderment and insight, certainty and uncertainty, sanity and insanity. In our minds, as we are now, wisdom and confusion arrive simultaneously, or as we say, are co-emergent. This means that we face a continuous state of choice between the two, and that everything depends on which we will choose. This constant uncertainty makes everything seem bleak and almost hopeless, but if you look more deeply at it, you will see that its very nature creates gaps, spaces, in which profound chances and opportunities for transformation are continuously flowering, if, that is, they can be seen and seized. In fact, as the teachings can help us to understand, every moment of our experience is a Bardo. As each thought and each emotion arises out of and dies back into the essence of mind. It is in moments of strong change and transition, especially, the teachings make us aware, that the true sky-like, primordial nature of our mind will have a chance to manifest. The deeper our sensitivity and the more acute our alertness to the amazing opportunities for radical insight offered by gaps and transitions like these in life, the more inwardly prepared we will be for when they occur in an immensely more powerful and uncontrolled way at death. This is extremely important because the Bardo teachings tell us there are moments when the mind is far freer than usual, moments far more powerful than others, which carry a far stronger karmic charge and implication. The supreme one of these is the moment of death. For at the moment the body is left behind, we are offered the greatest possible opportunity for liberation. The reason why the moment of death is so potent with opportunity is because it is then that the fundamental nature of mind, the ground luminosity or clear light, will naturally manifest, and in a vast and splendid way. If at this crucial moment we can recognize the ground luminosity, the teachings tell us, we will attain liberation. This is not, however, possible unless you have become acquainted and really familiar with the nature of mind in your lifetime through spiritual practice. And this is why, rather surprisingly, it is said in our tradition that a person who is liberated at the moment of death is considered to be liberated in this lifetime, and not in one of the Bardo states after death. For it is within this lifetime that the essential recognition of the clear light has taken place and been established. This is a crucial point to understand. I have said that the Bardos are opportunities, but what is it exactly about the Bardos that makes it possible for us to seize the opportunities they offer? The answer is simple. They are all different states and different realities of mind. In the Buddhist training, we prepare through meditation to discover precisely the various interrelated aspects of mind and skillfully to enter the different levels of consciousness. There is a distinct and exact relation between the Bardo states and the levels of consciousness we experience throughout the cycle of life and death. So as we move from one Bardo to another, both in life and death, there is a corresponding change in consciousness, which, through spiritual practice, we can intimately acquaint ourselves with and come, in the end, completely to comprehend. Since the process that unfolds in the Bardos of death is embedded in the depths of our mind, it manifests in life also at many levels. There is, for example, a vivid correspondence between the degrees in subtlety of consciousness we move through in sleep and dreams and the three Bardos associated with death. Each of the Bardos has its own unique set of instructions and meditation practices, which are directed precisely to those realities and their particular states of mind. This is how the spiritual practices and training designed for each of the Bardo states can enable us to make the fullest possible use of them and of their opportunities for liberation. The essential point to understand about the Bardos is this. By following the training of these practices, it is actually possible to realize these states of mind while we are still alive. We can actually experience them while we are here now. It is because the Bardo states are all contained within our minds that they can be revealed and freed through the Bardo practices. The natural Bardo of this life is of the utmost importance. It is here and now that the whole preparation for all the Bardos takes place. The supreme way of preparing, it is said, is now, to become enlightened in this lifetime. The natural Bardo of this life spans the whole of our lifetime between birth and death. Its teachings make clear to us why this Bardo is such a precious opportunity, and what it really means to be a human being, and what is the most important and only truly essential thing for us to do with the gift of this human life. The Masters tell us that there is an aspect of mind that is its fundamental basis, a state called the ground of the ordinary mind. It functions like a storehouse in which the imprints of past actions caused by our negative emotions are all stored like seeds. When the right conditions arise, they germinate and manifest as circumstances and situations in our lives. Imagine this ground of the ordinary mind as being like a bank, in which karma is deposited as imprints and habitual tendencies. If we have a habit of thinking in a particular pattern, positive or negative, then these tendencies will be triggered and provoked very easily, and recur and go on recurring. With constant repetition, our inclinations and habits become steadily more entrenched and go on continuing, increasing and gathering power even when we sleep. This is how they come to determine our life, our death, and our rebirth. We often wonder, how will I be when I die? The answer to that is that whatever state of mind we are in now, whatever kind of person we are now, that's what we will be like at the moment of death, if we do not change. This is why it is so absolutely important to use this lifetime to purify our mind stream, and so our basic being and character while we can. How is it that we come to be alive as human beings? All beings who have similar karma will have a common vision of the world around them, and this set of perceptions they share is called a karmic vision. Yet even within the human realm, all of us have our own individual karma. Each one of us is a complex summation of habits and past actions, and so we cannot but see things in our own uniquely personal way. Our human existence is not the only kind of karmic vision. 6 realms of existence are identified in Buddhism: gods, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hells. They are each the result of one of the 6 main negative emotions: pride, jealousy, desire, ignorance, greed, and anger. Do these realms actually exist externally? They may, in fact, exist beyond the range of the perception of our karmic vision. Let's never forget, what we see is what our karmic vision allows us to see, and no more. Looking at the world around us, and into our own minds, we can see that the 6 realms definitely do exist. They exist in the way we unconsciously allow our negative emotions to project and crystallize entire realms around us, and to define the style, form, flavor, and context of our life in those realms. And they exist also inwardly, as the different seeds and tendencies of the various negative emotions within our psychophysical system, always ready to germinate and grow, depending on what influences them and how we choose to live. How we perceive the world depends entirely on our karmic vision. Everything that we see around us is seen as it is because we have been repeatedly solidifying our experience of inner and outer reality in the same way, lifetime after lifetime. And this has led to the mistaken assumption that what we see is objectively real. With most of us, karma and negative emotions obscure the ability to see our own intrinsic nature and the nature of reality. As a result, we clutch onto happiness and suffering as real, and in our unskillful and ignorant actions go on sowing the seeds of our next birth. Our actions keep us bound to the continuous cycle of worldly existence, to the endless round of birth and death. So everything is at risk in how we live now at this very moment. How we live now can cost us our entire future. This is the real and urgent reason why we must prepare now to meet death wisely, to transform our karmic future, and to avoid the tragedy of falling into delusion again and again and repeating the painful round of birth and death. This life is the only time and place that we can prepare in, and we can only truly prepare through spiritual practice. This is the inescapable message of the natural Bardo of this life. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is a basic, normal, elementary spiritual education, a complete spiritual training for the natural Bardo of this life, which gives you the essential vocabulary, the ABC of the mind. The bases of this training are what we call the 3 wisdom tools: the wisdom of listening and hearing, the wisdom of contemplation and reflection, and the wisdom of meditation. Through them, we are brought to reawaken to our true nature. Through them, we uncover and come to embody the joy and freedom of what we truly are, and what we call the wisdom of egolessness. In Tibetan, ego is called dak zin, which means is then defined as incessant movements of grasping at a delusory notion of I and mine, self and other, and all the concepts, ideas, desires, and activity that will sustain that false construction. Such a grasping is futile from the start and condemned to frustration, for there's no basis or truth in it. And what we are grasping at is, by its very nature, ungraspable. The fact that we need to grasp at all and go on grasping shows that in the depths of our being, we know that the self does not inherently exist. From this secret, unnerving knowledge spring all our fundamental insecurities and fear. Lifetimes of ignorance have brought us to identify the whole of our being with ego. Its greatest triumph is to inveigle us into believing its best interests are our best interests, and even into identifying our very survival with its own. This is a savage irony, considering that ego and its grasping are at the root of all our suffering. Ego plays brilliantly on our fundamental fear of losing control and of the unknown. And even if we were to see through ego's lies, we're just too scared to abandon it. For without any true knowledge of the nature of our mind or true identity, we simply have no other alternative. To end the bizarre tyranny of ego is why we go on the spiritual path. But the resourcefulness of ego is almost infinite, and it can at every stage sabotage and pervert our desire to be free of it. The truth is simple, and the teachings are extremely clear, but as soon as they begin to touch and move us, ego tries to complicate them because it knows it is fundamentally threatened. As soon as the teachings begin to touch us deeply, unavoidably we are faced with the truth of ourselves. As the ego is revealed, its sore spots are touched, and all sorts of problems will start arising. As ego watches us gleefully become more and more ensnared in its web, it will even blame all the pain, loneliness, and difficulties we are going through as we come to know ourselves on the teaching, and even on the teacher. Ego is so clever, it can twist the teachings for its own purposes. Yet, however hard ego may try to sabotage the spiritual path, if you really continue on it and work deeply with the practice of meditation, you will begin slowly to realize just how gulled you have been by ego's promises, false hopes, and false fears. Slowly you begin to understand that both hope and fear are enemies of your peace of mind. Hopes deceive you and leave you empty and disappointed, and fears paralyze you in the narrow cell of your false identity. You begin to see also just how all-encompassing the sway of ego has been over your mind. And in the space of freedom opened up by meditation, when you are momentarily released from grasping, you glimpse the exhilarating spaciousness of your true nature. As you listen more and more to the teachings, contemplate them, and integrate them into your life, your inner voice, your innate wisdom of discernment, what we call in Buddhism discriminating awareness, is awakened and strengthened, and you start to begin to distinguish between its guidance and the various clamorous and enthralling voices of ego. Gradually you will find yourself able to free yourself more and more quickly from the dark emotions that have ruled your life. And this ability to do so is the greatest miracle of all. And when death comes, you will have learned already in life how to control those emotions and thoughts that in the states of death, the Bardos, would otherwise take on an overwhelming reality. It is important to remember always that the principle of egolessness does not mean that there was an ego in the first place and the Buddhists did away with it. On the contrary, it means there was never any ego at all to begin with. To realize that is called egolessness. The way to discover the freedom of the wisdom of egolessness, the Masters advises, is through the process of listening and hearing, contemplation and reflection, and meditation. They advise us to begin by listening repeatedly to the spiritual teachings. As we listen, they will keep on and on reminding us of our hidden wisdom nature. Listening is a far more difficult process than most people imagine. Really to listen, in the way that is meant by the Masters, is to let go utterly of ourselves, to let go of all the information, all the concepts, all the ideas, and all the prejudices that our heads are stuffed with. If you really listen to the teachings, those concepts that are our real hindrance, the one thing that stands between us and our true nature, can slowly and steadily be washed away. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche used to say, the more and more you listen, The more and more you hear, the more and more you hear, the deeper and deeper your understanding becomes. The deepening of understanding then comes through contemplation and reflection, the second tool of wisdom. As we contemplate what we've heard, it gradually begins to permeate our mind stream and saturate our inner experience of our lives. Everyday events start to mirror and more subtly and directly to confirm the truth of the teachings, as contemplation slowly unfolds and enriches what we have begun to understand intellectually and carries that understanding down from our head to our heart. The third tool of wisdom is meditation. After listening to the teachings and reflecting on them, we put into action the insights we have gained and apply them directly through the process of meditation to the needs of everyday life. In ancient times, there were extraordinary masters and students who could, by just practicing with unswerving devotion one single instruction, attain liberation. Even now, if we were to put our mind to one powerful wisdom method and work with it directly, there is a real possibility we would become enlightened. Our minds, however, are riddled and confused with doubt. Sometimes it seems that doubt is an even greater block to human evolution than desire and attachment. Our society promotes cleverness instead of wisdom and celebrates the most superficial, harsh, and least useful aspects of our intelligence. The vast truth of the mystical teachings handed down to us is not something that our endangered world can afford to dismiss. Instead of doubting them, why don't we doubt ourselves, our ignorance, our assumption that we understand everything already, our grasping and evasion, our passion for so-called explanations of reality that have about them nothing of the awe-inspiring and all-encompassing wisdom of what the masters, the messengers of reality, have told us. Don't let us take doubts with exaggerated seriousness, or let them grow out of proportion, or become black and white or fanatical about them. What we need to learn is how slowly to change our culturally conditioned and passionate involvement with doubt into a free, humorous, and compassionate one. This means giving doubts time, and giving ourselves time to find answers to our questions that are not merely intellectual or philosophical, but living and real and genuine and workable. Doubts cannot resolve themselves immediately, but if we are patient, a space can be created within us in which doubts can be carefully and objectively examined, unraveled, dissolved, and healed. The spiritual journey is one of continuous learning and purification. When you know this, you become humble. There is a famous Tibetan saying, "Do not mistake understanding for realization, and do not mistake realization for liberation." And Milarepa said, "Do not entertain hopes for realization, but practice all your life."
All the spiritual teachers of humanity have told us the same thing, that the purpose of life on earth is to achieve union with our fundamental, enlightened nature. There's only one way to do this, and that is to undertake the spiritual journey with all the ardour and intelligence, courage and resolve for transformation that we can muster. To follow the path of wisdom has never been more urgent or more difficult, yet there is one significant source of hope in this tragic situation, and that is that the spiritual teachings of all the great mystical traditions are still available. Unfortunately, however, there are very few masters to embody them, and an almost total lack of discrimination in those searching for the truth. Recognizing who is and who is not a true master is a very subtle and demanding business, and in an age like ours, addicted to entertainment, easy answers and quick fixes, the more sober and untheatrical attributes of spiritual mastery might very well go unnoticed. As Patrul Rinpoche wrote, The extraordinary qualities of great beings who hide their nature escapes ordinary people like us, despite our best efforts in examining them. On the other hand, even ordinary charlatans are expert at deceiving others by behaving like saints. If true, must it be in the chaos of our contemporary spiritual supermarket? So how are we today, in an trustful age, to find the trust that is so necessary in following the spiritual path? What criteria can we use to assess whether or not a master is genuine? True teachers are kind, compassionate, tireless in their desire to share whatever wisdom they have acquired from their masters, never abuse or manipulate their students under any circumstances, never under any circumstances abandon them, serve not their own ends but the greatness of the teachings, and always remain humble. Real trust can and should only grow towards someone whom you come to know over time embodies all these qualities. You will find that this trust becomes the ground of your life, there to support you through all the difficulties of life and death. It cannot be stressed too often that it is the truth of the teaching which is all important, and never the personality of the teacher. This is why Buddha reminded us in the 4 reliances, rely on the message of the teacher, not on his personality. Rely on the meaning, not just on the words. Rely on the real meaning, not on the provisional one. Rely on your wisdom mind, not on your ordinary judgmental mind. At first, then, more important than finding the teacher is studying the truth of the teaching, for it is through making a connection with the truth of the teachings that you will discover your living connection with the Master. We all have the karma to meet one spiritual path or another. Follow with complete sincerity the path that inspires you most. The most important thing is not to get trapped in what we see everywhere in the West, a shopping mentality, shopping around from master to master, teaching to teaching, without any continuity or real sustained dedication to any one discipline. Nearly all the great spiritual masters of all traditions agree that the essential thing is to master one way, one path to the truth, by following one tradition with all your heart and mind to the end of the spiritual journey, whilst remaining open and respectful towards the insights of all others. Following one teaching is not a way of confining you or jealously monopolizing you. It's a compassionate and skillful way of keeping you centered and always on the path, despite all the obstacles that you and the world will inevitably present. So when you have explored the mystical traditions, choose one master and follow him or her. It's one thing to set out on the spiritual journey, it's quite another to find the patience and endurance, the wisdom, courage, and humility to follow it to the end. You may have the karma to find a teacher, but you must then create the karma to follow your teacher. Even when you have chosen your master and are following the teachings as sincerely as you can, you will often meet difficulties and frustrations, contradictions and imperfections. Don't succumb to obstacles and tiny difficulties. These are often only ego's childish emotions. Don't let them blind you to the essential and enduring value of what you have chosen. Don't let your impatience drag you away from your commitment to the truth.
The Buddha says in one of the scriptures, of all the Buddhas who have ever attained enlightenment, not a single one accomplished this without relying upon a master. And of all the 1,000 Buddhas that will appear in the Sion, none of them will attain enlightenment without relying on a master. In 1987, after my beloved master, the Rinpoche, passed away in France, I was sitting in a train returning to Paris from southwest of France, where he had lived. Images of thousands of acts of generosity, tenderness and compassion passed through my mind, and I found myself in tears, saying to myself over and over again, had it not been for you, how could I possibly have understood? I realized with an intimacy and poignancy that I had never experienced before just why such a sacred emphasis is placed in our tradition on the relationship between the master and the disciple, and just how essential this relationship is to the living transmission of the truth, from mind to mind, from heart to heart. Without my masters, I would have had no possibility at all of realizing the truth of the teachings. I cannot imagine even having been able to reach the humble level of understanding that I have. Perhaps the most moving and accurate account of the true nature of the Master I have ever heard comes from my Master Jamankense. He said that although our true nature is the Buddha, it has been obscured from the beginning of time by a dark cloud of ignorance and confusion. This true nature, however, our Buddha nature, has never completely surrendered to the tyranny of ignorance. Somewhere it is always rebelling against its domination. Our Buddha nature, then, has an active aspect which is our inner teacher. From the very moment we became obscured, this inner teacher has been working tirelessly for us, tirelessly trying to bring us back to the radiance and the spaciousness of our true being. Not for 1 second, Jamankense said, has the inner teacher given up on us. In its infinite compassion, one with the infinite compassion of all the Buddhas and all the enlightened beings, it has been ceaselessly working for our evolution, not only in this life, but in all our past lives also, using all kinds of skillful means and all types of situations to teach and awaken us and to guide us back to the truth. When we have prayed and aspired and hungered for the truth for a long time, for many, many lives, and when our karma has become sufficiently purified, a kind of a miracle takes place. And this miracle, if we can understand and use it, can lead to the ending of ignorance forever. The inner teacher, who has been with us always, manifests in the form of the outer teacher, whom almost as if by magic we actually encounter. This encounter is the most important of any lifetime. Who is this outer teacher? None other than the embodiment and voice and representative of our inner teacher. The Master whose human shape and human voice and wisdom we come to love with a love deeper than any other in our lives is none other than the external manifestation of the mystery of our own inner truth. What else could explain why we feel so strongly connected with him or her? At the deepest and highest level, the Master and the disciple are not and cannot ever be in any way separate. For the Master's task is to teach us to receive without any obscuration of any kind the clear message of our own inner teacher, and to bring us to realize the continual presence of this ultimate teacher within us. I pray that all of you may taste in this life the joy of this most perfect kind of friendship. Not only is the Master the direct spokesman of your own inner teacher, he or she is also the bearer, the channel, the transmitter of all the blessings of all the enlightened beings. That is what gives your master the extraordinary power to illumine your mind and heart. He or she is nothing less than the human face of the Absolute, the telephone, if you like, through which all the Buddhas and all the enlightened beings can call you. He or she is the crystallization of the wisdom of all the Buddhas and the embodiment of their compassion directed always toward you. The rays of their universal sunlight aim directly at your heart and mind to liberate you. In my tradition, we revere the Master for being even kinder than the Buddhas themselves. Although the compassion and the power of the Buddhas are always present, our obscurations prevent us from meeting the Buddhas face to face. But we can meet the Master. He or she is here, living, breathing, speaking, acting before us to show us in all the ways possible the path of the Buddhas, the way to liberation. For me, my Masters have been the embodiment of the living truth, undeniable signs that enlightenment is possible in a body, in this life, in this world, even here, even now, the supreme inspiration in my practice, in my work, in my life, and in my journey towards liberation. My Masters are, for me, the embodiments of my sacred commitment to keep enlightenment foremost in my mind until I actually achieve it. I know enough to know that only when I reach enlightenment will I have the complete understanding of who they really are and of their infinite generosity, love and wisdom. I would like to share with you this beautiful prayer, the words of the great Master, Jigme Lingpa, a prayer we say in Tibet to invoke the presence of the Master in our heart. From the blossoming lotus of devotion at the center of my heart, rise up, O compassion Master, my only refuge. I am plagued by past actions and turbulent emotions. To protect me in my misfortune, remain as the jewel ornament on the crown of my head, the mother of the great bliss, arousing all my mindfulness and awareness, I pray.
Just as the Buddha said that of all the Buddhas who attained enlightenment, not one accomplished this without relying on the Master, he also said, "It is only through devotion, and devotion alone, that you will realize the Absolute Truth." The Absolute Truth cannot be realized within the domain of the ordinary mind. And the path beyond the ordinary mind, all the great wisdom traditions have told us, is through the heart. This path of the heart is devotion. When the Master is able to open your innermost heart and offers you an undeniably powerful glimpse of the nature of your mind, a wave of joyful gratitude surges up in you towards the one who helped you to see, and the truth that you now realize the Master embodies in his or her being, teachings, and wisdom mind. That uncontrived, genuine feeling is always rooted in repeated, undeniable inner experience, a repeated clarity of direct recognition, and this only, is what we call devotion. Devotion, then, is in one sense the most practical way of ensuring a total respect for, and therefore openness to, the teachings as embodied by the Master and transmitted through him or her. The more devoted you are, the more open you are to the teachings. The more open you are to the teachings, the more chance there is for them to penetrate your heart and mind and so to bring about a complete spiritual transformation. All the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and enlightened beings are present at all moments to help us, and it is through the presence of the Master that all of their blessings are focused directly at us. All we need to do to receive direct help is to ask. What most of us need almost more than anything is the courage and humility really to ask for help from the depths of our hearts, to ask for the compassion of the enlightened beings, to ask for purification and healing, to ask for the power to understand the meaning of our suffering and to transform it. At a relative level, to ask for the growth in our lives of clarity, of peace, of discernment, and to ask for the realization of the absolute nature of mind that comes from merging with the deathless wisdom mind of the Master. There is no swifter, more moving or more powerful practice for invoking the help of the enlightened beings, for arousing devotion and realizing the nature of mind, than the practice of Guru Yoga. Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche wrote, "The words Guru Yoga mean union with the nature of the Guru, and in this practice we are given the methods by which we can blend our own minds with the enlightened mind of the Master. Remember that the Master, the Guru, embodies the crystallization of the blessings of all Buddhas, Masters, and enlightened beings. So to invoke him or her is to invoke them all, and to merge your mind and heart with your Master's wisdom mind is to merge your mind with the truth and very embodiment of enlightenment." All the wisdom traditions of Tibet have placed so much importance on the practice of Guru Yoga, and all the foremost Tibetan masters have treasured it as their innermost heart practice. Following is a simple practice of Guru Yoga that anyone, whatever their religion or spiritual belief, can do. This wonderful practice is Sogyal Rinpoche's main practice, the heart and inspiration of his whole life, and whenever he does Guru Yoga, it is Padmasambhava that he focuses on. As Buddha himself was passing away, he prophesied that Padmasambhava would be born not long after his death in order to spread the teachings of the Tantras. It was Padmasambhava who established Buddhism in Tibet in the 8th century. For Tibetans, Padmasambhava, or Guru Rinpoche, as he is also called, embodies a cosmic, timeless principle. He is the universal Master. He has appeared countless times to the masters of Tibet, giving teachings and prophecies. He also left thousands of visionary teachings for future times, which have been revealed again and again by many great masters who have been his emanations. One of these visionary treasures is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In our tradition, we consider Padmasambhava as the embodiment of all one's masters, and so when you merge your mind with him in Guru Yoga, all of them are included within him. You can, however, use any enlightened being, saint or master from any religion or mystical tradition for whom you feel devotion, whether they are alive or not. This practice of Guru Yoga has 4 main phases: invocation, merging your mind with the Master through his heart essence, the mantra, receiving the blessing or empowerment, and uniting your mind with the Master and resting in the nature of Rigpa. The first stage is invocation. Sit quietly. From the depths of your heart, invoke in the sky in front of you the embodiment of truth in the person of your Master, a saint or an enlightened being. Try to visualize the Master or Buddha as alive and as radiant and translucent as a rainbow. Believe with complete trust that all the blessings and qualities of the wisdom, compassion and power of all the Buddhas and enlightened beings are embodied in him or her. If you have any difficulty visualizing the Master, imagine this embodiment of truth simply as a being of light, or try to feel his or her perfect presence there in the sky before you, the presence of all the Buddhas and Masters. Let all the inspiration, joy, and awe you feel take the place of visualization. Trust simply that the presence you are invoking is really there. The Buddha himself said, "Whoever thinks of me, I am in front of them." My master, Dudjom Rinpoche, used to say that it does not matter if at the beginning you cannot visualize. What is more important is to feel the presence in your heart and know that this presence embodies the blessings, compassion, energy, and wisdom of all the Buddhas. Relaxing and filling your heart with the Master's presence, invoke him or her very strongly with all your heart and mind, with total trust. Call upon him or her inwardly. Help me, inspire me to purify all my karma and negative emotions, and to realize the true nature of my mind. Then, with deep devotion, merge your mind with the Master, and rest your mind in his or her wisdom mind. And as you do so, give yourself up to the Master completely, saying to yourself something like, "Help me now, take care of me, fill me with your joy and energy, your wisdom and compassion. Gather me into the loving heart of your wisdom mind. Bless my mind, inspire my understanding." Then Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche says, "There is no doubt that the blessing will enter your heart." When we undertake this practice, it is a direct, skillful, and powerful way to carry us beyond our ordinary mind and into the pure realm of the wisdom of Rigpa. There we recognize, come to discover, and acknowledge that all Buddhas are present. So, feeling the living presence of Buddha, of Padmasambhava, of your Master, and simply opening your heart and mind to the embodiment of truth really does bless and transform your mind. As you invoke the Buddha, your own Buddha nature is inspired to awaken and blossom as naturally as a flower in sunlight. The second stage of Guru Yoga is maturing and deepening the blessing. When you come to this part of the practice, merging your mind with the Master through the mantra, recite the mantra, Om Ahom Benza Guru Padma Siddhi Hom, thinking of it as actually being Padmasambhava and the blessing of all the Masters in the form of sound. Imagine your whole being filled with him, and feel as you recite the mantra, which is his heart essence, that it vibrates and pervades you, as if hundreds of little Padmasambhavas in the form of sound were circulating inside you, transforming your whole being. Using the mantra, then, offer your heart and soul in fervent and one-pointed devotion, and merge and mix and blend your mind with Padmasambhava or your Master. Gradually you will feel yourself coming closer to Padmasambhava and closing the gap between you and his wisdom mind. Slowly, through the blessing and power of this practice, you will find you actually experience your mind being transformed into the wisdom mind of Padmasambhava and the Master. You begin to recognize their indivisibility. Just as if you put your finger into water it will get wet, and if you put it into fire it will burn, so if you invest your mind in the wisdom mind of the Buddhas, it will transform into their wisdom nature. What happens is that gradually your mind begins to find itself in a state of Rigpa, as the innermost nature of your mind is nothing other than the wisdom mind of all the Buddhas. It is as if your ordinary mind gradually dies and dissolves, and your pure awareness, your Buddha nature, your inner teacher, is revealed. This is the true meaning of blessing, a transformation in which your mind transcends into the state of the Absolute. This maturing of the blessing is the heart and main part of the practice to which you should devote the most time when you do the Guru Yoga practice. The third stage is empowerment. Imagine now that from the Master thousands of brilliant rays of light stream out toward you and penetrate you, purifying, healing, blessing, empowering, and sowing in you the seeds of enlightenment. Know and feel that you are now empowered through the blessing with the indestructible body, speech and mind of Padmasambhava, of all the Buddhas. The fourth stage is resting in the Rigpa. Now let the Master dissolve into light and become one with you in the nature of your mind. Recognize beyond any doubt that this sky-like nature of your mind is the absolute Master. Where else would all enlightened beings be but in the Rigpa, in the nature of your mind? Secure in that realization, in a state of spacious and carefree ease, you rest in the warmth, glory and blessing of your absolute nature. You have arrived at the original ground, the primordial purity of natural simplicity. As you rest in this state of Rigpa, you recognize the truth of Padmasambhava's words. Mind itself is Padmasambhava. There is no practice or meditation apart from that. This is the most important practice in life and the most important practice at the moment of death. Guru Yoga forms the basis of the practice of Powa, the transference of consciousness at the moment of death. For if, at the moment of death, you can unite your mind confidently with the wisdom mind of the Master and die in that peace, then all will be well. Our task in life, then, is to practice this merging with the wisdom mind of the Master again and again, so that it becomes so natural that every activity, sitting, walking, eating, drinking, sleeping, dreaming and waking, starts to be increasingly permeated by the Master's living presence.
No one can die fearlessly and in complete security until they have truly realized the nature of mind. For only this realization, deepened over years of sustained practice, can keep the mind stable during the mortal chaos of the process of death. Of all the ways I know of helping people to realize the nature of mind, that of the practice of Dzogchen, the most ancient and direct stream of wisdom within the teaching of Buddhism, and the source of the Bardo teachings themselves, is the clearest, most effective, and most relevant to the environment and needs of today. The origins of Dzogchen are traced to the primordial Buddha, Samandabhadra, from whom it has been handed down in an unbroken line of great masters to the present day. Hundreds of thousands of individuals in India, the Himalayas and Tibet have attained realization and enlightenment through its practice. There's a wonderful prophecy that in the dark age, the heart essence of the Samandabhadra will blaze like fire. My life, my teachings and this book are dedicated to lightening this fire in the hearts and the minds of the world. My constant support and inspiration and guide in this is the Supreme Master Padmasambhava, who is the essential spirit of Dzogchen.